Joining me now is Ayman Mohyeldin, host of Ayman on MSNBC, and he covered the Israeli-Palestinian conflict as a foreign correspondent. Will Bunch, columnist for the Philadelphia Inquirer, and Dr. Tanya Haj-Hassan, pediatric intensive care and humanitarian physician with Doctors Without Borders. She is co-founder of the social media platform Gaza Medic Voices. Thank you both for being here. Dr. Haj-Hassan, I want to start with you just to get your reaction to this deal that will allow the Red Cross to go in and see Israeli and other hostages, and will also allow humanitarian groups to begin operating and delivering fuel and medical supplies into Gaza. Give us your take on this deal that hasn't happened yet, but that seems to be in the works.
You know, I've been saying since day one that this is one of the worst humanitarian catastrophes that myself and many in the humanitarian sector have seen. And day, it just gets worse. I think we're at a point right now where humanitarian aid is so desperately needed. And we're still negotiating, letting in drops of what is needed across the Gaza Strip. I will welcome any humanitarian aid, but what we've seen on the ground so far has been nominal, hasn't been anywhere near what is needed. Winter is coming. There are 1.5 million internally displaced people within the Gaza Strip, and we can talk at some point about the injured. But I'm at the moment I'm just talking about those who are displaced with no access to clean water, suffering from starvation, from all the illnesses and outbreaks that we're starting to see as a result of displacement, poor sanitary conditions, and waterborne diseases. So any amount of aid is welcome, but what is needed is a ceasefire so that we can have unhindered humanitarian aid going into the Gaza Strip. I think there needs to be medical checks, of course, on the hostages, but also on the entire civilian population in the Gaza Strip, of which we know at this point, so 20,000 are injured and in need of urgent medical attention.
Let me go to you, Ayman, because it seems to me, Daniel Levy made the point yesterday, and I think it's a smart point, that this is a deal that Bibi Netanyahu had to make. He's facing increasing opposition to himself inside of his own country, protests, people marching against him, including families of some of these hostages. The humanitarian catastrophe that Dr. Haj-Hassan just described is exploding protests around the world. There's a lot of pressure, and I assume the Biden administration feels some pressure since, you know, the U.S. is owning some of this as well. Talk about kind of the imperatives for him to have to make this kind of deal and what it means for him politically, because it seems to me that the more hostages that come out, particularly as all the Israeli citizen hostages come out, there's no deal for the other nationalities hostages. There's no more incentive to stop the bombardment.
Yeah, and look, you know, honestly, we have known about an offer to release the hostages through negotiations, through mediation, really from almost the first couple of days of this war. I mean, there was a cell that was created immediately after October 7th to begin the process of trying to diplomatically release these hostages. So it was very early on that the Israeli government was presented with what many believe were two fundamentally opposite objectives. One, release the hostages. Two, destroy Hamas, as they stated. Those two almost could not have happened in tangent by military force alone. And so from day one, the Prime Minister of Israel found himself in a situation where a lot of critics were saying, you are ultimately going to get to this point. Yes, the military operation could strengthen your hand in negotiation. It could lessen the demands of Hamas. But ultimately, in order to secure the release of 200 plus hostages in the middle of 2.2 million people that you don't know where they are, you are going to have to rely on negotiations to get them. Now, he has found himself in somewhat of a dead-end road. 5,000 children dead, 13,000, 14,000 Palestinians killed overall, 46% of the population either displaced or have their residence and buildings destroyed. The international pressure is mounting. The political pressure in Israel is mounting. The leaders of the security services, the IDF, the ISA, the Mossad, the Shin Bet, everybody telling him, you have to release the hostages through negotiations, plus the families. So he ultimately came to this conclusion that the safest way to do it, and perhaps the easiest way to do it, is through diplomacy. And Hamas had demonstrated early on in this process by releasing those 2 Americans and those 2 elderly Israeli women that they were prepared to release the hostages through diplomacy. So we are back to where we could have been without the casualties, without the loss of life on the Palestinian side, and with a much better success rate of releasing all the hostages than where we could have been earlier on than where we are today.
Let me ask you a follow-up question, Ayman, because we know that of the hostages that are there, we don't know precise numbers of nationalities, but there are a substantial number of migrant workers who work in Israel, who come from places like Thailand and India and the Philippines, who are among the hostages. According to NBC News, the latest guidance that we've gotten, this negotiation is only for Israeli citizen and dual national hostages, mainly American. Is there any reporting on whether the governments of these other countries, and some of them are British nationals, but they are of Indian extraction, et cetera, are other governments having separate negotiations to get their people out? Because, again, once the Israeli nationals are out, the question is there an incentive to stop the bombardment of Gaza? Because the continued bombardment not only obviously creates a humanitarian crisis, it creates a crisis for those hostages, too.
It certainly does. And I think the way to kind of approach this is to think of the hostages in a few different categories. And let's say what we do know is close to 70 are Israeli soldiers. Those 70 Israeli soldiers, Hamas has made clear that they are not going to release under any condition until or unless it is through diplomacy or mediation that requires a complete end of the hostilities. So even if we release all of the Israeli hostages through mediations, the Qatari government has said that it is open to negotiating with any government that wants to get its citizens released. And we know that, for example, the Prime Minister of Thailand has met with the Qatari Prime Minister to figure out what they can do to help release those held captive by Hamas in Gaza. For its part, Hamas has said clearly that they do not want civilians. They do not want women and children and foreign workers, and they're prepared to release them. But their conditions for releasing them require the end of hostilities so that they can consolidate these hostages, which they say till this day, not all of them are under their control. Some of them have been taken by other militant groups and other Palestinian factions.
Let me go to you, Will Bunch, because this is all, it's all very stressful, I think, for everyone. But you wrote a couple of columns, I think, that are important for us to really focus again on Bibi Netanyahu himself. You've called him a cautionary tale for Americans. Please explain.
Well, exactly. I mean, you mentioned in your introduction some of the parallels to Donald Trump. And the fact that he's under criminal indictment, just as Donald Trump is important because a lot of Israeli citizens feel that his actions, both before October 7th and maybe to some extent after October 7th, have been motivated by his efforts to, stay out of jail, put off these corruption charges. Opinion polls in Israel have shown the Israeli people, by and large, are tired of his leadership. The polls I've seen, it's divided between people who want him to leave as prime minister right now and people who are willing to let him finish out this war and then want him to go immediately after. So it's interesting. And you have to wonder, today in announcing this deal, he said, once we finish these exchanges, the war is back on. And you just have to wonder, again, how much of this is self-preservation. And one reason it's funny because I'm actually a domestic columnist, but I've been writing about this because I do think he's a cautionary tale for electing Donald Trump. Not just the legal parallels, which are pretty remarkable, but also just to form his government, he took a sharp right turn, which, and he's adopted some really extreme ministers, the ones you've heard making some of these comments about reducing Gaza to rubble. Here with Donald Trump in the U.S., he also sees taking a far right turn as his path to returning to the presidency. Some of these extreme people like Stephen Miller that he's surrounding with, and some of his extreme ideas. History in the 20th century has shown that far-right authoritarians have very militaristic policies, and their policies end up in war. And I think that's something that American voters should look at look at what's happened with Netanyahu and think about what it might mean returning Donald Trump to the White House.
I appreciate all of you being here. I wish we had more time, but we are out of time. Ayman Mohyeldin, Will Bunch, Dr. Tanya Haj Hassan, very illuminating conversation. Thank you all very, very much.